Hi, it's me. Hello, I'm back. If you're new here, this is not my usual content, and if you're a subscriber and you're not interested in this at all, just don't worry. We'll be back to the regular content on Sunday, but I just wanted to make this video really quick because I love young adult books. I am a young adult writer. I'm not published, but you know, I'm trying to be one. So I read a lot of young adult books because that's the genre I write in, so I'm just trying to, you know, study the craft, I guess. So I'm going to talk about my favorite young adult books that I read this year, and actually, as I was sitting down to film this, I checked the covers, the inside covers of all of these, and they actually all were published in 2018. Literally all of them, so that's kind of a fail. This is a great video already, welcome to my channel. But I did read all of these this year, so I'm going to be talking about 4 books, so stay tuned. I'll probably timestamp when I talk about each of these books in the description. If you're looking for good books to read and you like young adult novels, then you should definitely check these out and keep on watching. I think I'll go from least favorite to favorite. Even though I like all of these books, I'm gonna start with the one that I have the most criticisms about, and then I'm just gonna move up to my favorites. There are some really, really amazing books in here. Like, the one that's my favorite is my new favorite book of all time. So if you want to hear about that, you can keep on watching or like check the timestamp for the last one or whatever. But okay, let's start with this one. Murdertrending by Gretchen McNeil. I read this pretty early on this year. I think it was like January or February that I read this. This is a really good book. This is a book about a world in which they created an Alcatraz 2.0 for people, prisoners who are convicted of a crime to go there, and basically they have serial killers that have been hired by the government, and they like hunt down the prisoners and kill them, and they like broadcast it on TV instead of just like, you know, giving a prisoner the death penalty. This is where they send the prisoners that are getting the death penalty. So it follows this girl who is new to the island and trying to prove that she was wrongly convicted / like figure out ways to escape, I guess. And this is a really, really interesting book as a concept, and the writing is very like plot driven, I guess. Like, it's not I don't remember this being like a very like beautifully written poetic book, but I remember it being interesting enough to get through and very fast paced. Yeah, it's an interesting book. I definitely like read through it pretty quickly. It's definitely a page turner. There are certain aspects about the twist of this book that I didn't love, and not everything was solved in the end either, and I think that's because there's a sequel, I think, that like just came out or something, or maybe it's been out for a while and I'm just like late. But yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, you should definitely read this. I wouldn't say that it's one of my favorite books of all time, but it's entertaining, definitely entertaining. One quick major criticism that I feel I need to mention about this book is the romance aspect feels very forced and not that genuine. It's just kind of like there. There's no depth to the romance part. I think this book could have not had these two characters like each other, and it would have been the same book. Yeah. Not my favorite thing, but it doesn't really take away from the plot, so it's fine. Okay, next I'm going to talk about People Like Us by Mele. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but this book, it's really long, first of all. It's quite a thick book. 375 pages. Yeah, it's a lengthy one. This is definitely like a very Pretty Little Liars type vibe. If you liked Pretty Little Liars, I would definitely say this would be something you would be into. It's like a private school murder mystery type thing. It was definitely interesting to read. I remember like the first big chunk in the beginning, I remember I didn't really love this book. There were just like so many characters and just so much going on that I didn't really care that much about, but it's definitely like a slow build-up type book, because by the end I was like, you know, page turner, couldn't put it down, like type of thing. So Yeah, it's basically about this girl who was killed at their boarding school, and they're trying to figure out who did it. And it kind of does a good job of making everybody suspicious, kind of like Pretty Little Liars. If you watch that show, you remember, like, literally they could make anyone look guilty. It's kind of like that. You do get a solid answer at the end of who did it, and yeah, I liked the twist in this book. I thought it was well written, really good ending. Not the newest, freshest concept that's ever been out there, but honestly, who cares? It's an interesting book. It's a good read. Next, we've got Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. I absolutely love this book. The cover is what drew me into this. I remember seeing this cover like on Amazon and clicking it. I was like, I have to find out what that is. So yeah, whoever did the cover art, congrats to you, because that's pretty cool. This is a really well done book. It's about this girl whose best friend dies right after some other girls in their school had also died, and this girl and her best friend were like into witchcraft. So the girl uses a spell to try to bring back her best friend, and it works. And it's this whole adventure of trying to find who killed these girls from their school. And I kind of like how in this book the main character isn't just some skinny white girl. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just like, you know, like a common thing. She's Mexican and she's just unapologetically fat, which is cool. This book definitely focuses a lot on friendship rather than like romance. I mean, it has a little bit of that too, but it's very much about friendships, and I really like that aspect about it. It's really like, I think it's really important to focus on like strong friendships in books, and also just the way this is written, it's just very like modern and very like feminist. It's in the small things. It's not like there's no like big message here, but just it's in the small things. You can just tell that like this book is very like I guess like woke, if you will. I definitely connected to the main character in this book, and for me when reading, that's a pretty important thing. I like to really like and connect with the main character or characters, so yeah. I normally don't even really read anything that's fantasy or supernatural. I kind of just like stick to real world type books, but this does a really good job of blending like a little bit of fantasy, like a little bit of witchcraft into like a real world setting, and I really like this book. I would highly recommend this, even if you don't like fantasy, even if you don't really care about witchcraft or anything like that. And the twist in this one is pretty crazy. Like, I definitely did not see it coming. So if you like twists, I think all of these books have twists, more or less. Okay, last but not least, this is my favorite, Sadie by Courtney Summers. I would literally die for this book. I cannot say enough good things about this book. I just need to tell you this before I talk about it. This is my new favorite book that I've ever read, ever. It does such a beautiful job of mixing like good writing with good plot. Like, it's so poetic and beautiful and descriptive, and it's also like fast paced. There's no like filler. I feel like every chapter has a purpose. It basically follows this girl called Sadie who's trying to hunt down her sister's murderer, and she's going on this whole like journey. In between the chapters with her perspective, there's also like chapters that show a true crime podcast that's like talking about her. So it's really interesting to hear like both perspectives. Sadie is just such a good character and such an interesting person. This is just like the most beautiful book I've ever read, I think. Like, it's definitely not a lighthearted book. There's some like pretty intense topics in here. If you're worried about that kind of thing, there's like discussion of sexual assault, more specifically like child molestation. So if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, you might want to skip this one. Nothing happens on page or anything. It's like all kind of implied, but still, like, if you don't want anything to do with those topics, then don't read this probably. But it's very like well done. Like, there's nothing for like shock value or anything like on page that's intense. It's just like, it's all just implied. That's another thing I really like about this book is It doesn't just like lay all the information out for you. It's a long, slow reveal of everything that's happened to this girl and her sister who's been murdered. And this is the best book I've ever read. I've said that like a million times, but the ending is so intense and so beautiful. You kind of know the whole time that this can't end well. And honestly, putting this down, I was sad not to know. Well, I won't give too much away, but it ended the way that it had to end. I can't remember if this made me cry. I think it did. I wouldn't be surprised if I cried in this book. Also, it's worth mentioning that Sadie is 19, and that's a little bit old for a young adult novel. I mean, obviously that's a young adult, but normally they're a little bit younger, so I would definitely say this could appeal to an older audience, like people in their 20s or even older, honestly. This book just has a very like mature way of portraying itself. Not that younger people couldn't enjoy it. Of course they could too, but I just thought that was worth noting. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope that someone watched this. This might get like 2 views because this is not really the type of content I normally do on this channel, and I don't know if anyone wants to see me talk about some books that I read this year, but they're actually from 2018. But yeah, if you happen to watch this whole thing, let me know down below if you've read any of these books or if you're gonna read any of them based on what I said. And yeah, they're definitely all worth reading, I think. Like, I really liked all of them, more or less. So yeah, those were the 4 best books I read this year. Oh, if you have any recommendations for me for books like these, please let me know. I love young adult books, especially like thrillers, crime, that kind of thing. I hope you guys like this video, and I will see you guys in 2020. Alright, bye.